Hello, I'm taking on a challenge to beat every playable Nintendo published game. The next games are Game & Watch Super Mario Bros., Game & Watch Climber, and Game & Watch Balloon Fight. Whoa, 3 games in one? What's going on here? Well, if you've watched my other videos on the Game & Watch series, you might recognize all 3 of these. Super Mario Bros., Climber, and Balloon Fight were all originally released as part of the Crystal Screen series, which I've already covered in other videos. However, all 3 of them were eventually re-released as part of the new widescreen series, and these are the versions I'm covering today. Now, you may be wondering, if these are just re-releases, do these even count as new games? Well, at the very least, Super Mario Bros. Is different, as it featured completely redone sprites for Mario, and wow, these look so much better than the original. Mario finally doesn't look constantly upset anymore. You may recall that these sprites were originally seen in the Discoon variation of the game that was given away as prizes for the Famicom Grand Prix F1 race competition. As far as I can tell, the new widescreen version is basically identical to the prize version, just with a different case. So, what about the other 2? Are they any different? Well, kind of. The Crystal Screen versions all had see-through backgrounds, and the new widescreen versions didn't, so they designed new backgrounds for each of them. Now, technically, these backgrounds are actually just a part of the screen and not a part of the game itself, so maybe they shouldn't have counted as new games. However, I wasn't entirely sure what else might have been changed, so I just played through them regardless. Nintendo never said why these 3 were all chosen to receive remakes, but my best guess was that since the Crystal Screen didn't seem to end up being all that popular, they wanted to re-release the games in a format that they knew had done well before. In the case of Super Mario Bros., this seems to have paid off, as fan estimates placed the new widescreen version somewhere around 1 million sales, surpassing the estimated sales of the original Crystal Screen version. Alright, with all of that out of the way, let's jump into my time with the games. Now, I've already explained all the mechanics to each of these games before, so I'm just going to gloss over the rules this time. Let's start by taking a look at Super Mario Bros. The objective of this one is to reach the end of a sequence of stages, and each stage is either an auto-scroller or a single-screen challenge. As I mentioned before, the most obvious change with this version is Mario's new sprites, and man, what an improvement. Although his head does look a little large up there. Less impressive though are the background changes. The top and bottom of the stage are blue, and the sides fade into a pinkish color. It's not really all that interesting, but I don't know if they had much of a choice since each stage is supposed to take place somewhere drastically different, similar to the original Super Mario Bros. I guess in a way this one was ultimately more suited for the make-it-yourself backgrounds of the Crystal Screen. Stage 1 is a pretty basic get to the end stage, and once I reached Princess Peach, we can see that her sprite was changed too. Now, remember, according to the manual, this isn't actually Peach, but an illusion of Peach she uses to guide you to the next stage. In Stage 2, I found a 1-up mushroom and finished the stage with 3 extra lives still remaining. After a few more levels, I jumped just a tad early on one of the single screen challenges and I lost my first life. In Stage 7, I unfortunately couldn't remember the correct path in the pick-a-path section, and after choosing incorrectly, I stupidly walked off the edge as I was going through the stage again. I got it on the next try though, and up next was the final level, the castle stage with spinning fire bars. It took some time, but I made it to the end and found the real Princess Peach, finishing a full loop. It showed Bowser flying out of the castle again, and similar to everyone else, his sprite has been revamped too. Well, that's my goal complete, but of course I wanted to see how far I could take my run. In Loop 2, bullet bills were added in throughout the game. I gained and lost lives here and there, but I finished Loop 2 with 2 extra lives still remaining, and I even got past 10,000 points too. Loop 3 introduces a hammer-throwing Lakitu, and it was here that my run ended on the Crystal Screen version. Lakitu's hammer just moves kinda fast, and the Game & Watch's simple movements can make it a bit hard to dodge. While I did make it further this time, they changed up which route was the correct one on Stage 7, and I ended up losing all my lives to this stage. Like before, beating a full loop was the goal I set for this one, so with that, my time with Game & Watch Super Mario Bros. For the new widescreen was complete. Up next was Game & Watch Climber. This one has you playing as a boy creatively named Climber, and your mission is to train on Block Mountain and defeat the dragon that lives there. In this one, you jump and move around as you climb to the top. Despite supposedly taking place on a mountain, pretty much everything you climb are brick platforms. You can smash these bricks by jumping underneath them, and if you wait long enough, the resident blockmen will fall into place and create new platforms. However, you also have to avoid these blockmen and the occasional bat that flies by. One of the trickier aspects of Climber is that enemies can appear pretty suddenly on the sides and mess you up. Alright, let's take a look at the only real change here, the background. Well, despite being see-through, the original game still had a bunch of clouds, but look, some of the colors are different, and they're placed in slightly different spots. That totally warrants a new playthrough, right? Anyway, I decided to just play the game again in case there was anything more to see. Once again, my goal for this will be to both defeat the dragon and reach 300 points to refill my lives. On my first run, I got hit by a bat almost right away. Let's pretend that didn't happen. So on my definitely first run, I did really good. I got through all 5 phases without losing any lives, meaning it was time to challenge the dragon. So the way this works is that you have to time your jump so that the peak of your jump lines up with the movements of the dragon. Honestly, it kind of feels like RNG, unless there's something else I'm missing. You only get 2 tries, and I failed spectacularly. Wait, how did I miss this? The dragon wasn't even jumping. I got ripped off. Missing the dragon doesn't cost you any lives, but you move on to the next level without gaining any extra points. I guess that means I've got to clear another 5 stages if I want to beat him. During level 7, I finally lost a life, although I restored it by reaching 300 points not too long after. Okay, that's one of my 2 goals completed. Unfortunately, the game started to get a lot harder after this, and I lost all 3 of my lives before seeing the dragon again. Bummer. Time to start over and try again. I guess I was just starting to play sloppily, as on my next run I got another game over before I even reached the dragon. Come on, if only I'd gotten it the first time. On my next run, I finally made it back to the dragon in one piece. Okay, don't screw this up. I jumped a bit close to one of the bats, but this time I did it. Comparing the two, it looks like sometimes you step up and sometimes you step down. Maybe it has something to do with which jump you're on? Well, whatever it is, the dragon has been defeated. With that, my time with Game & Watch Climber for the new widescreen was complete. On to the last game, Game & Watch Balloon Fight. In this one, you play as the Balloon Man and your objective is to hunt down the evil pirate, Oiram Repis. Oh, on that note, somehow I completely missed this in my earlier video, but Oiram Repis is literally just Super Mario spelled backwards. I kind of can't believe I didn't catch that at first. Anyway, in this one, your points serve as your fuel, which get refilled with each balloon you grab. You have to navigate through a bunch of stages while dodging a bunch of sparks in the sky. What makes this one a bit weird is the controls. You can press a button to let out a puff of air, but doing so only once causes you to float in place. You have to press it twice in quick succession to actually go up. Additionally, if you don't occasionally let out a puff of air, you'll start to move down. Now, you may recall that when I first played the game, I thought this was the only way to move down. However, during this playthrough, I finally realized that you could also just move down by simply pushing the down button. Don't I feel silly? Okay, let's take a look at the new widescreen changes this time around. I guess the stars in the background look kind of different. For some reason, they also removed the big ship or whatever that thing is in the background too. Anyway, let's take a look at my actual run. There are no lives in this one, as failing just causes you to lose a bunch of fuel, so my goal was simply going to be to beat Oiram Repis. Well, I want to say this one went smoothly, but unfortunately, it wasn't until a bit later that I figured out about moving down. On my first run, I ran straight into a spark, thinking I would move down in time, and this happened before I could even reach 100 points, so I just immediately ran out of fuel and lost. Yeesh. On my second run, I did a lot better, although I did lose a life after earning almost 500 points. Thankfully, I still had plenty of fuel left to spare now, and I made it to Oiram Repis. So this is the fight where moving down quickly really comes in handy, and sadly, I still didn't realize you could do it quickly yet. All you have to do is survive for long enough, but without that trick, it becomes a lot harder, and I lost to him. Similar to Climber, failing on the boss simply moves you on to the next stage, so you have to do another full loop to challenge him again. I didn't really want to deal with the game getting harder, so I just reset my run to start over from the beginning. During this run, the light bulb finally turned on. This game actually has a down button. What happens if I press it? Okay, in my defense here, the up button does not move you up in this game since you move up by puffing out air, so I just assumed the down button didn't do anything either. With this new, advanced tech, the game became a total breeze. I made it to Oiram Repis with ease, and now that I could actually dodge his attacks without having to wait a million years to move down, I beat him without even breaking a sweat. When the boss timer ran out, my character flew over and grabbed Oiram Repis and chucked him into the background. With that, my time with Game & Watch Balloon Fight for the new widescreen was complete, and all 3 of the new widescreen remakes were done. On to the reviews. Well, I don't have a whole lot to say about these other than the fact that they were practically identical to the originals. The new sprites for Super Mario Bros. Were nice, but it's not like that's enough to change my opinion on the game, so all 3 of my scores here are going to be the same as the originals. I like the variety of Super Mario Bros., although the auto-scrolling nature of the game doesn't always work. It can be a bit slow, and there's a particularly frustrating mechanic where if you try to jump the moment the screen scrolls, your input just does nothing, and this becomes more of a problem as the game speeds up. The unique levels still end up making this one of my favorite Game & Watch games, but ultimately I still gave it a 6 out of 10. Climber is another one that I liked a decent amount for a Game & Watch game. This one really shines when you're able to move quickly and climb up the mountain at a super fast pace. Unfortunately, sometimes waiting on the block bend can grind the game to a complete halt, and I wish the sides weren't quite so dangerous compared to everything else. It's a fun time, but the pacing can be a bit all over the place. I also gave this one a 6 out of 10. Unfortunately, Balloon Fight didn't turn out quite as good as the other two. The game feels kind of slow, as there's just too much waiting around for the auto-scroll in it. The puffing mechanic makes Balloon Fight also a bit awkward to control, although being able to actually move down does help a bit. I gave this one a 5 out of 10. With Super Mario Bros., Climber, and Balloon Fight for the new widescreen series all complete, I have now finished 53 out of the 58 Game & Watch games in the challenge, meaning I am now 91.38% of the way through all of the Game & Watch games. Thanks for watching the video. If you want to see more of these in the future, make sure you subscribe to the channel so that you won't miss out on the next one. Also leave a like if you enjoyed it, since it will help the channel grow and motivate me to continue this series. I hope I will see you in the next step of my quest to beat every Nintendo game.